Not only to see how many people love and celebrate science and the environment, but because we're not the only ones. It's more than just us. We celebrate this day. We are one of 7 cities across the state of Missouri. 7 cities showed up. We're one of 4 406 cities across the nation. 406 cities. But it's way better than that. We've got more than 610 cities across the globe. So each one of you are celebrating Earth Day with hundreds of thousands of people across the earth. I couldn't think of a more perfect way to celebrate. This is so fantastic. So, the March for Science, it demonstrates our passion for science and sounds a call to support and safeguard the scientific community. Recent policy changes have caused heightened worry among scientists. The incredible and immediate outpouring, like what I see here, has made it clear that these concerns are also shared by you and myself and hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. Right? Yes, and this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't Republican. This isn't Democrat. The mischaracterization of science is a partisan issue which has given policymakers permission to reject the overwhelming evidence. It is a critical and urgent matter. It's time for people who support scientific research and evidence-based policies to take a public stand and be counted. The March for Science champions robustly, this is my favorite part. This is the mission. This is why I did this. The March for Science champions robustly funded and publicly communicated science as a pillar of human freedom and prosperity. We unite, all of us here, all of us across Missouri, across the United States, across the world. We unite as a diverse, nonpartisan group to call for science that upholds the common good, and for political leaders and policymakers to enact evidence-based policies in the public's best interests. This is a celebration of science. It's not about scientists or politicians. It's about the very real role that science plays in each one of your lives. Who has a science gave me sign? Raise it up. Look around. Look at your signs. Look at the signs. Where did I lost my place. Nevertheless, the march has generated a great deal of conversation around whether or not scientists should involve themselves in politics. In the face of an alarming trend towards discrediting scientific consensus and restricting scientific discovery, we might ask instead, can we afford not to speak out in its defense? So, you're probably wondering who you are. Who you are. I think you know who you are. You're probably wondering who we are and why we are here and what gives us the right to bring you all here. First, let me introduce you to Sarah. Sarah, what do you got to say?
Good morning. I want to tell you how amazing it is to see you guys all here because this has unfolded in a way that we could not have imagined. Seeing so many of you out here supporting science is something I didn't think I'd see here in Springfield, particularly in this weather. Your refusal to be deterred from the cause is very inspiring. I admit that this is actually my first venture into organizing an event like this. All of my adult life, I've been a participant into causes for change, but this time I was compelled to do more. The stakes are too high. Back in February, when I realized that we had another global movement on our hands with the March for Science, I wanted to do everything in my power to facilitate an event so that Springfield had the opportunity to stand up and be counted too. And here we are. Thank you for realizing the importance of the march, for braving the elements, and for stopping at nothing to be heard.
Thank you, Sarah. And my name is Eric Wells. Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi. Over the last 10 weeks, the most common question I've been asked is, what kind of scientist are you? I'm not a scientist. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm a lover of science and the environment. I'm a science enthusiast. Who here is not a scientist? Who here is not a scientist? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. I'm the executive director of the Springfield Skeptics, a board member of the Missing Piece Foundation. and the education coordinator for the Next Gen Genealogy Society. In a previous life, I was a remodeling contractor for 2 decades, but in the last few years, I shifted into a whole new role, a whole new career as a genealogist. The two professions surprisingly have something in common. Both require me to solve problems. Am I talking too loud? I'm just so darn excited. It's the excitement of those unsolved questions and the thrill of finding the solution. That's exactly what science is to me. An incredibly powerful tool to prod the world around us when our curiosity gets the better of us. That's why I love science. But it's not why I'm here. I'm standing in front of you because I'm pissed. I'm angry. I can't stand being silent anymore. It's a luxury we can no longer afford. If any one of you have approached me a year ago and said, hey, there's this March for Science thing, you want to put it on? I doubt. I'm like, maybe, but I doubt I would have even been standing here today. I had a case of apathy back then. However, with this new administration being elected, it immediately became apparent that their personal anti-science opinions, paired with the whisperings of the largest donors, superseded any possibility of applying science and evidence to inform actions taken by our elected officials. A year ago, I wouldn't have contacted my legislators. Today, you better believe they're going to hear from me. And not just from me, they need to hear from you as well. I'm Eric Wells, and I approve this message. All right, guys, we're done talking. Well, we're going to move on to our very first presenter, and this is someone I tell you I'm a bit of a fanboy about. Our first presenter is Dr. Pamela Gay. She's an astronomer. She's a professor. She's a writer. She is a director. See if I can do this better than Fraser. She is a writer. She is a director of technology and citizen science at the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. And she is the co-founder of the CosmoQuest community of citizen scientists. But I know her best as a podcaster, as the host of Astronomy Cast. But through CosmicQuest.org, Dr. Gay works to engage people like you and me, people who are excited about science, but don't necessarily have a science education, in both learning and doing science. Through CosmicQuest, you can join thousands of other everyday folks like you and I by mapping our solar system in unprecedented detail with their citizen science projects. Through Astronomy Cast, Dr. Gay and her co-host Fraser Kane take listeners on a fact-based journey through our cosmos, exploring not only what we know, but how we know the universe we find ourselves in. I've been listening to Astronomy Cast now for the last 9 years. Yeah, 9 years. It was one of the very first podcasts I had on one of the very first iPods. Science, am I right? iPods. Over the years and after hundreds of episodes, Dr. Gay has ignited my curiosity, and both her and Fraser hold a very special place in my heart. Dr. Gay is my Carl Sagan and my Neil deGrasse Tyson. She was the one who rekindled my curiosity and fascination with science. Not as a child, but instead as an adult in my early 30s. And it is with immense respect and great pleasure that I introduce you to Dr. Pamela Gay.
Thank you so much, Eric. So I'm not as coordinated as him, so I need to use a mic stand. Now, I need to start by saying I'm here as an individual. My words are my own. I represent no company, no government, no sponsor. I'm here speaking my mind and my opinions. I'm here to speak my truth, like I think all of us are here today. It's Earth Day. Now, I have to admit, when I was a kid, this was not a holiday I knew about. I first learned about it my freshman year in high school when my geometry teacher made me write a term paper. And I was angry because what did the Earth have to do with geometry? I was a kid. But Earth Day didn't sink in, and I didn't really think about it again until 2009, when during the International Year of Astronomy on Earth Day, we asked everyone to please turn off your lights for just 1 hour, just 1 hour on Earth Day, so that people might see the stars. Think about that. We allowed the world 1 hour to see the stars. Earth Day is just one of those days most people don't mark on their calendar. For the most part, it's a holiday that's largely ignored here in the US. It lacks the commercial tie-ins of cards and candy that we have for Valentine's Day and Easter. It's missing the drinking and parades of St. Patrick's Day. No, Earth Day, this day, is not a day of consumerism that marketing machines can get behind and help us remember to celebrate. Earth Day is a celebration of our planet and the science that is used to study it and the conservation that is needed to help humanity and our ecosystem survive. Our economy should care about Earth Day, but right now it doesn't, and we need to change that. In 1970, Denz Hines founded Earth Day and encouraged peaceful protests like this one to demand environmental reform. Today, 47 years later, we're here to recognize that understanding our world and its place in the universe requires not just earth science, but all science. Earth Day has become our day, a day to march for science and demand better for ourselves and better for our world. We demand that science be supported through excellent educational opportunities and through sufficient federal funds that our scientists have the freedom to try new things, to experiment, and to not fear sometimes failing as they push our understanding of the universe we share. We demand open access to their results. And we demand that when scientific discoveries necessitate changes in human behavior, science-based policies and regulations get put in place and enforced. We demand this for our society, for all peoples in all their diverse and wonderful forms. I was born after Apollo. I started high school as the Iron Curtain fell. My youth in a field dominated by Apollo generation scientists gives me a disheartening perspective. In my life, I have watched as our society has grown complacent about our so-called leadership in science. After all, I hear from my seniors, we won the race to the moon. We are winning in the Nobel Prize count. The best and brightest from around the world are all coming to the US to go to university. We are winning. No, we were winning. In 2016, none of the 7 science-related Nobel Prizes went to an American. In 2015, it was 1 in 8. Since 2000, only 38 of the 130 science prizes went to US-born scientists. Since 2011, US astronauts have traveled to and from the space station on Russian capsules because we lack our own spacecraft. Students who come here for education are returning home, and American-born scientists, including Nobel Prize winner Brian Schmidt, are leaving the US to seek better opportunities elsewhere. There are reasons people are leaving. It is getting harder and harder for scientists in the US to get needed funding to do research, and we must change that. Grant funding rates at the National Institutes for Health have dropped from 35% in 1978 to just 17%. At NASA, we're seeing just under 25% of our grant submissions get funded. In my field of astronomy, we've seen National Science Foundation funding rates fall from 35% to less than 15% since 2000. What this means is that in my field, for every 6 grants submitted, maybe one is funded. Every unfunded grant means students who won't have a job doing science. It means professors who won't have a summer salary, who won't have a salary their entire year. For early career researchers, it means scientists who won't science, who won't be able to have their career. Failure to have better funding for science means medical trials that won't be done. It means satellites to monitor our planet that won't be launched, and technology that will never be pioneered. Lack of funding means lack of science. We demand change. We demand the restoration of federal funds for research in all fields. But this isn't just about America. When Earth Day was founded, celebrations were held at 2,000 colleges and universities, at around 10,000 schools, and in hundreds of communities across the nation. And that sounds amazing until you realize that last year, celebrations had spread to 192 nations, and it included over 1 billion people. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a global community to raise our understanding of science. Some breakthroughs require a unique mix of creativity, of genius, and inspiration that might only be found in one person in a generation. And we can't know what village or city that child will come from. We need all children everywhere to be able to be part of learning and doing science. We all know of the young Jewish refugee who escaped Nazi Germany after his property was seized and his books were burned. His name was Einstein, and he gave us relativity, a field of science necessary for GPS and so much more. Some of you may know of Chandrasekhar, an astronomer whose theories let us understand that matter at high densities changes form, and our largest stars have the ability to collapse down to be as small as our moon or even as small as Manhattan. He made this discovery while on a boat from his homeland in India to England to go to graduate school. Let that sink in. Young Chandrasekhar only had his undergraduate degree when he redefined the possible forms of matter. Each of these men changed our understanding of the universe in a fundamental way. They changed our understanding of the shape of space and the possible structures of reality. Neither man could have fully succeeded in their homeland. Einstein probably would have been killed. Chandrasekhar just wouldn't have had the same educational access he was able to have by moving to England. It was because the global science community recognized their talents and found places for them to strive forward that they were able to thrive. And we must continue to make space, make room for the refugees and for those who seek educational opportunities to come and do science. We must facilitate everyone being able to advance science. This nurturing isn't available to everyone. In reviewing the list of Nobel Prize-winning scientists, I found that since 2000, only 6 women and no blacks or Hispanics had won. There was one fellow from India, several Pakistanians, but largely it was a white and Asian male list of names. This lack of diversity at the highest levels is mirrored throughout our fields. For instance, we saw less than 500 blacks receive PhDs in physics between 1972 and 2012. Less than 500. These individuals represented less than 2% of all physics PhDs. Women, they made up just 10% of the degrees. Black women, there were 36. 36 out of 25,000 because of bias in the system. What great discoveries never happened because the wrong little girl was told, why don't you go take advanced placed English instead of being encouraged to take the math she loved? That happened to me. How many other people didn't become great scientists because they listened to that advice? What medical breakthrough was missed because the black child was told, well, maybe they should focus on sports? We have a society, as a society, lost science, lost the ability to make advancements because we have built walls that are just too hard for too many to cross. We need to increase diversity. We need to increase inclusion. We need to make science someplace where all come and all are welcomed. Science, the methods by which we understand our reality, and the means by which we develop medicine and technology. Science needs to be welcoming to all people, all nations, all races, and all genders. We are here on this 47th Earth Day to demand that science be recognized as necessary for understanding our reality, to acknowledge that while scientists may falter, science is the means of getting at the truth of where we come from, how did life evolve on Earth, and how will it all someday end? Science is our only hope. If we want to stop climate change, if we want to head off the spread of antibiotic-resistant drugs, and antibiotic-resistant diseases, rather, and if we want to simply find ways to produce enough food that hunger stops being a concern, science is the only way to advance our society. For science to advance, we need scientists. We must train our children in the ways of science. They must be given the chance to learn to reason and to use observations to understand our world. They need to come to understand the ideas of why apples fall and why the moon orbits our planet, and be taught that this is the same thing. This is the same force called gravity. They must become problem solvers who aren't told to just sit down, be quiet, and stop asking questions. They must be told to always question and always seek the truth. Our education system is far from perfect, and with education we must do more than just supply books and labs with technology. We must also work to overcome biases in the system and actively welcome children of all backgrounds into our classes. It is not enough to say all are welcome. We must make all welcome in science. In mid-March, a group of 5 minority students, 2 African American and 3 Latino, won their regional first robotics competition. During the competition, they didn't just have to demonstrate engineering excellence. They also had to overcome parents and students shouting at them to go back to Mexico. These were elementary kids, just 9 and 10 years old. And they were being trained by society that instead of building robots, the best robots they could, in a nation with amazing robotics programs, that instead of doing science, instead of building robots, they should go back to Mexico, a country they didn't even know. This is wrong, and we must change this. Science needs all society, and we must actively welcome diversity and squash hate. There is no room for hate in science. All races, all genders, and all orientations and all kinds, able-bodied and not, religious and not, all are needed, and it's through our diversity of perspectives, inspirations, and genius that we will advance science. Intolerance will not be accepted. Our biases will be acknowledged. We will work to do better, to actively be better, and to keep improving our fields until our scientists reflect the society they are advancing. We will change our science field to reflect our society. You are here because you want to see these advances. You want to make these advances a reality. And for you to see the science, we must do our research in the open. I am proud to have spent much of my career working with NASA and being not only able to, but required to share my science widely and freely with the public. We are here because we demand that work being done with federal funds must be made freely and fully available to all. Researchers should not be asked to hide the results behind firewalls, and they should not see their discoveries censored because they might be bad for somebody's political agenda. Forecasts for rising sea levels don't care which candidate you voted for. My lungs demand clean air. My lips demand clean water to drink. I demand data to be released so that we can make informed decisions as voters, as consumers, and as compassionate human beings. We demand open access to data and research results, but that alone is not enough. With understanding comes responsibility. We demand that our government base policies and regulations on our best scientific understandings. On this day in 2016, the Paris Agreement was signed by 194 UN member states. The international document calls for a decrease in the emission of greenhouse gases. This international document and works toward finding ways to combat climate change and to mitigate the devastating effects of sea rise and changes in rain patterns. This is not the first time the many nations of the globe have worked together to save our planet. Do you remember what happened in the 80s? When we would turn on the news and see the images of the hole in the ozone layer over the Arctic. In 1987, the Montreal Agreement declared that chemicals responsible for depleting the ozone layer would be phased out. Ratified by 197 nations, this agreement forced us to change the chemicals in our refrigerators, in our air conditioners. It made us change our hairspray from aerosol to pump. It forced us to change a lot of consumer products. It has also allowed the Earth's ozone layer to begin to heal. What it didn't do was collapse the global economy. From the Montreal Agreement, we learned that saving the Earth is possible if we work globally and enforce policies and regulations that are meaningful and data-driven. Today, there is concern that the United States will set aside the Paris Agreement and set aside our commitments to the environment. These are not data-driven decisions. Today, we demand our government enact and enforce science-driven policies and regulations that protect us, protect our lands for generations to come. This is right for the economy, and this is right for humanity. Science is right for humanity. Science is a human endeavor. We will fail. We will make mistakes. We will go down rabbit holes that lead nowhere. But we will also make extraordinary discoveries. But only if we are enabled to do science. Science takes education. Science takes funding. Science takes people. Science takes all of us working together to demand that our elected leaders fund science education, fund science research, make all federally funded research open to all, and make federal policies that are informed by research. We, all of us, we are science. Our voices can change science, change society, and even change the world. We are that global community that will raise our understanding of the universe. That is us. We will not be silenced. We will let science ring. Thank you.
Dr. Pamela Gay, everyone! Oh my gosh. Okay, a couple of reminders. If you have to go to the bathroom, we got porta potties somewhere. Where are the porta? Oh! We got porta potties that way. If you keep walking, you'll find them. Head on over to the table. Check out O-Steam. The maker community is fantastic. I am totally in love with the maker community. Also, if you haven't yet, if you just arrived, text COUNT to 417-986-0986 because data. Am I right? Use your cell phones while you have them out. Contact your legislator. Find out their number. And those banners, oh my gosh, we've had to flip them around to the backside already. If you haven't sent a message to our legislators, our elected officials, head on over there and send your message. So, our next presenter, I'm very excited to introduce her to you, is Dr. Wafaa Kaf. She is a native of Egypt, and in 2003, she received her PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. She's currently a professor of audiology at the Communication Sciences and Disorders Department at Missouri State University, as well as the president of the Missouri Academy of Audiology. Her main research area, let me start over. Her main research is on the area of auditory evoked potentials to assess hearing function in both healthy and special need populations. She also conducts research in early diagnosis of Meniere's disease, assesses aspects of auditory function in children with autism spectrum disorders, and studies middle ear function using wideband this is a tough word. Tympanometry. Look that up, kids. In normal and middle ear conditions, Dr. Kaf is the recipient of several awards, including the 2009 Missouri State Foundation Award for Excellence in Teaching, the 2013 MSU Excellence in Community Service Award, and the 2017 MSU Foundation Award for Excellence in Research. She's an amazing woman, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Kaf. Did I?
That's fine. I want to come with my high heel, then I was told no. I try not to put my coat to look nice, then I'm getting frozen back there. So, thank you so much for your commitment to be standing here for that Science Day. Says a lot. And thanks, Eric, for the invitation. Where did he go?
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for the invitation. Last minute invitation. So, my speech today is about exercising your birthright. We always talk about human rights, women's rights, disability rights, minority rights. But we forget that learning and the art of science that is associated with learning is our birthright. Personally, I believe that science is a lifelong learning process that should start at birth. That's why it is a birthright for everyone. As an audiology professor, hearing science research are integral part of my work, but there is no value of my research and scientific knowledge without translating and applying the findings into practice and meaningful health outcomes to individuals with hearing and balance disorders. To ensure that scientific knowledge is applicable to the good of all human beings, research needs upgrading and improving. In other words, science cannot be transient. The knowledge of scientists, educators, doctors, and architects will become seriously impaired if they do not keep abreast of a long period of time with the latest advancements in their respective fields. So funding is so critical for basic scientific research and advancing science. I do not know, this, I would just hold it. Yeah. Having said that funding is critical, science is becoming transient, and educators, scientists, and researchers are facing a real issue due to the budget cut. The 13.5% budget cut of the US Department of Education threatens to put higher education in Missouri out of reach for more students, especially underserved students with low socioeconomic status. We all know that low socioeconomic status is correlated with lower education, poverty, and poor health. Also, cutting the National Institute of Health funding would harm our scientific workforce and infrastructures, resulting in lab closures, ending careers, and graduating fewer number of new scientists, which will limit future scientific research as well. A student from St. Louis, Missouri, Ms. Taven Lewis, says, and I'm quoting, "I would just ask legislators, how can we progress and move forward as a society if we are not investigating in things like higher education?" In addition to higher education, cutting the NIH funding, which is the National Institute Health funding, to $25.6 billion would be devastating to all medical research, including hearing research, which is my area. According to the Hearing Health Foundation, the budget cut would disrupt the continuity of research efforts of many hearing researchers who have dedicated their lives to finding cures for hearing loss, tinnitus, and balance disorders. And this would affect our delivery of services for those individuals. Although funding is one of the main responsibilities of the federal government, contributions to the foundations, other organizations, and industry are needed now more than ever. I believe that the best everlasting charity that you can do and we could make is to support scientific research and share our knowledge and education with people who have been deprived of it. Not only do funding reductions affect our birthright, but also does immigration policy. As a scientist, I have contributed to and continue to contribute to research, to the collective knowledge for all of us. As an educator, I have nurtured and prepared students for entering into the workforce and contributing for society for the betterment of those around us. Our current immigration policy threatens the US pushing out and denying the entry of educators and scientists like me to this country. We come for the opportunities. We pursue our passions, and the investment made in the US are arguably returned several times over. In 1995, the Nobel Peace Prize recipient, Joseph Rothel Platt, proposed a Hippocratic oath for scientists. And this oath was for scientists who are opposing nuclear weapon. Yes, but I am feeling this oath is also for us. And the oath says, I promise to work for a better world where science and technology are used in socially responsible ways. I will not use my education for any purpose intended to harm human beings or the environment. Throughout my career, I will consider the ethical implications of my work before I take actions. While the demands placed upon me might be great, I signed this declaration because I recognize that individual responsibility is the first step on the path to peace. You were great. I will make you to warm up. Okay, what about this? Would you please repeat after me as I repeat that oath one more time? Okay. Where is it? I promise to work for a better world where science and technology are used in socially responsible ways. I will not use my education for any purpose intended to harm human beings or the environment throughout my career. I will consider the ethical implications of my work before I take action. I recognize that individual responsibility is the first step on the path to peace. Wow, this is wonderful. I haven't finished. finished yet. Okay. My final words. I'm finishing. Our health and strength diminish with age. True, right? But learning increases with time and exceeds our lives into new dimensions. We always hear that people die from overeating, overdrinking, not doing anything, correct? But have we heard that someone died from learning? No, no, never ever. Nobody ever died because of thinking or learning. Everyone, young or old, rich or poor, male or female, should have access to learning. Remember, what you have learned and what you have added to science cannot be taken away by others. And now, I'm serious here. This is my final words. My final words to you today is that life is dry without learning. Life is dry without learning and science, and that science will prevail any budget cut and any immigration policy only if we consider learning as our birthright. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kaf, everybody. So she is currently in need of participants for a study on Meniere's disease. If you or someone you know has been diagnosed with Meniere's disease or have a few of its symptoms, please head on over to her. Either talk to her before you leave or before she leaves, or head to our speaker bios on the website to contact her. There's a flyer there with more information on it. All right, and also we've got our tables. If you just showed up, head on over to the Missouri River Bird Association. If you're posting on social media, use the hashtag ScienceMarchSGF. And who's used the geofilter for Snapchat? 2 people. 4 people. 5 people. Awesome. Guys, I can't thank you enough for sticking around in this weather. It's miserable and my hands are cold, but I am just so heartened and warmed to see all of your faces here. So I am very lucky to introduce our next presenter, Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. He is the director of the Institute of Botanical Training and science director for Nature Site. You remember hearing Nature Site earlier? Yeah, this is the guy. In both positions, and the legislator banners. I'm sorry, Justin, I'm really sorry. Legislator banners, we're about to wrap them up. If you haven't signed them, if you have not sent a message to our elected officials, don't miss your chance to do so. You're going to use this one. In both positions, you're not a doctor. Justin Thomas conducts botanical and ecological research and instructs plant identification workshops. He has 20 years of professional experience and a Master of Science degree in botany from Miami University. Justin teaches botany at at Missouri University of Science and Technology, is the junior author of the Ecological Checklist of the Missouri Flora. How am I doing so far? Holds a research associateship at Missouri Botanical Gardens and also serves as the scientific advisor to several conservation groups. Ladies and gentlemen, all you science lovers out there, I present to you Justin Thomas.
There you go. Thanks. Whoa. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, right? Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thanks for tolerating the weather, and there's a lot of good presenters still left, so hold in there. I'm going to start with a little story about all of us humans. Anthropologists hypothesized that about 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens first acquired the psychological capacity for more complex and integrated societies. The technology began to accelerate which were once xenophobic cultures into more open cultures with trade routes, and they traded primarily technology and then later on art. And that's one of the first nemesis of what we define as modern humans. So science, technology, art, these are the things that define us, and it's why science is ultimately so intricate to our lives and into our complexity. Somebody had a sign earlier that said, order turns into chaos without energy. That's so true. Society turns into chaos without science, or society turns into chaos without science. Since our social cognitive revolution 70,000 years ago, science has given us the agricultural revolution of 8,000 years ago. It's given us the intellectual revolution of 1,600 years ago with Socrates and the great Greeks. It's given us the Renaissance 700 years ago, the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, which basically gave us America, where people said, hey, we as humans can dictate our own fates, and we can create societies based on democracies, based on the will of the people. That was science. And then the Industrial Revolution of about 250 years ago, which led to the more modern ways in which we live, extensive resource extraction. That's left us with a horrible legacy of pollution and odd political systems. It's time for another revolution in society. It's time for a new science revolution. And that's one of the things that the current political climate demonstrates to us, is that when we threaten science, we threaten the very core of our existence as a society. We need clean energy technologies, socially cognizant political policies, investments in education that promote the arts, promote human dignity, promote human rights, and environmental reciprocity. And by embracing science, we can finally begin to give back to the earth instead of taking so much more from it. The average person's exposure to the environment is largely limited to global problems, climate change being the dominating theme. While climate change is a major problem, it's merely symptomatic of a larger problem of apathy and what's been coined a nature deficit disorder, or you might even say a science deficit disorder in our society. We don't encourage the sciences and the study of nature to the degree that we should, and we're paying for it. Sadly, the average person doesn't hear enough about what we can do locally to positively affect natural systems that sustain us. Here in the Ozarks, we're fortunate to live in one of the world's biological hotspots. Beyond the scenery of the Ozarks, a lot of us don't know why the Ozarks are so important, though we live here and we enjoy the mountains and the streams and the hills and the birds and the bees. But the Ozarks, just to give you a little background, are one of the oldest, most continuously exposed landscapes in North America. Never been glaciated, never been covered with oceans, not in the last 300 million years. And so the organisms that are here have evolved here longer than anywhere else in North America. 160 organisms occur nowhere else on Earth but in the Ozarks. 160 organisms. They mostly consist of highly sensitive plants, fish, mollusks, crayfish. But additionally, there's thousands of species of wildflowers, grasses, sedges, rushes, frogs, turtles, salamanders, mammals, birds, moths, butterflies, beetles, worms, bats, fungi, bacteria, lichens, mosses, liverworts, etc., that can be found in our Ozark Hills, and they each have an ecological and evolutionary right to exist and persist. Yeah. Just as we do. As an ecologist and as a taxonomist, my research is focused on mostly the plants in the region, You might be surprised to know that there are at least 20 species of plants that occur in the Ozarks that are undescribed to science. Nobody's working on these things. They're out there, they need research, and a lot of them are extremely and exceedingly rare. And many are in danger of disappearing forever. And protecting them is the same as protecting ourselves. You know, what they need, we need. Stability, clean air, clean water. So what can we do? First we can do is get outside and explore. Even in your backyard, grab a field guide, dive into your backyard. Science depends on observation. Something as simple as birds that come to your feeder in your backyard and documenting them year after year, that's science. Science isn't all test tubes and equations. It can just be observation. And we are all capable of that. What else you can do is get involved in, there are various support groups for people like us that like to be nature, like science, like to be in nature. Lots of support groups. Many of them are here. Several are here. The Missouri Master Naturalist Program is a great program. Lots of local chapters. There's a Springfield chapter that's huge, active, great people. The Missouri Native Plant Society has monthly meetings and regular outings. They offer a chance to see wonderful places with wonderful people. Go beyond social media, meet real people in real places, and that way you'll know what's really going on. The Missouri Prairie Foundation, which also has a booth over there, has great outreach. If you've never been on a real prairie teeming with intricate life forms and amazing ancient systems, if you've never been on a prairie and stood with wildflowers and heard dick thistles singing in the background, then you haven't experienced America. That's America. Go to a prairie and see America. The more you explore state parks and conservation areas, the more you'll wish you had of them. They're great and they're underused. Call your legislator. Protect state parks and conservation areas. Both are constantly under threat of defunding. We have some of the best state parks in the nation. Make sure the governor and our legislative body understands that and that it's important to you. Another big one is fight invasive species. Invasive species cost the U.S. economy $120 billion every year due to impacts on the economy, impacts to natural systems. We pay, it's ironic because we pay organizations like the Missouri Department of Conservation or a National Park Service or all these different groups. There are people whose job it is to go eradicate invasive species, yet you can go to Walmart right now and fill a truckload of them, take them and plant them in your yard, and they explode across the landscape. There's virtually no regulation on that. A lot of municipal areas, Chicago, places like that, have enacted local legislation to prohibit the sale and distribution of invasive species. That needs to be more commonplace for sure. We need that on a federal agenda. Read Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy, and then give it to a neighbor. Read the Journal of Henry Rowe Schoolcraft's Travels Through the Ozarks. We have a highway named after the man. Surely we should know something about him. The Grow Native program, another great Missouri program that involves native species, has great online resources and just a great network of people to replace the invasive species in your own landscaping with native species that benefit native organisms and basically support dramatically more diversity than exotic species for sure. Most importantly, if you want to protect the environment or impassion science and society, get kids outside. Your kids, the neighbor's kids, it doesn't matter, just get permission first. Engender a love of nature and teach compassion of living things. The current uprising of anti-science, alternative facts, anti-intellectualism from the deeply illiberal alt-right threatens us all. We must not forget that science is how democracy, or is how society improves itself. But like liberal democracy, it requires a steadfast adherence to truth, idealism, optimism, and hope, all of which are meaningless without action. Thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Thomas. Oh. Head on over to his nature site table. They've got a lot of cool information for you there. And if you took some pictures and you want to share them with us, text the word share to that same number. Kind of cool. And then you guys are doing a fantastic job picking up trash. Whoa, that's awesome. All right, so I am very excited to introduce our next presenter, Vicke Kepling. She's a community organizer and a progressive activist with the Peace Network of the Ozarks. She fights for human rights and environmental issues. While attending school at Missouri State University, she was involved with the MSU Students for a Sustainable Future and helped with their annual Earth Day event, Ecopalooza! Kepling and members advocated against a marketing project that promoted fracking and the Keystone XL pipeline. I didn't hear you. What was that? She graduated from MSU with 2 master's degrees and has taught writing classes at Missouri State using sustainability as a focus. In her writing for social change class, she required students to keep a sustainability journal. Yeah. As a grassroots activist, Kepling has organized 7 No Dakota Access Pipeline actions. That's right. She's also a member of the Sierra Club and has lobbied with the group at the state capitol building in Jeff City. And she maintains a small garden in front of her home. Ladies and gentlemen, Vicke Kepling.
How are we doing today? Woo! Let's hear it for the planet. Let's hear it for Earth Day. Are you guys ready to get loud? Okay, I'm going to ask you questions, and I want you to answer stand up, fight back. Are you ready? Woo! When the air we breathe is under attack, what do we do? When the water we drink is under attack, what do we do? When the earth we live on is under attack, what do we do? Woo, that sounds great. As he said, I'm Vicke Kepling. I'm an activist, grassroots community organizer. I stand for people, planet, and peace over profits. I started out as an advocate for kids with disabilities, but my activism awakening came with the Occupy Wall Street movement. Not only was it an awakening for me, it was a revolution of caring. We all know the problems. We've known the problems, but people are standing up to care more, right? Woo! Also, we learned about direct democracy. That's when everyone's voice is equal. One of the things that we learned was twinkle fingers. Okay, how this works is if I say something that you like, you do this, or you do this. If someone says something that you're on the fence on, you're not really sure, you do this. If somebody says something you don't like, that you disagree with, you do this. Okay, so let's try it. If I say renewable energy, what do you do? If I say fracking, what do you do? Some people might do this, that's okay. I would do this. What if I said clean and pure water in the Ozarks? Woo! What about global warming? That's bad, right? Okay, that's really good. Another thing we learned was about mic check. You ever heard of mic check? Well, that's when if you ever are somewhere and somebody says mic check, you stop what you're doing, you look at the speaker, and you repeat what they say. And we're going to do that in just a minute. First, I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here. My environmental activism started with Students for a Sustainable Future. Great group of students. If you're at MSU, I really suggest that you check them out. I was one of the older students in the group, but I learned a lot, and I found out I was very passionate about it. So I went on to, I started teaching. I had all my students focus on sustainability. I organized an event against the Keystone XL pipeline. Yeah? Yeah! Yeah! Woo! And then I got very involved in the Standing Rock issue, the No Dakota Access Pipeline, the No DAPL issue. Large group of us went to Standing Rock in North Dakota over the Thanksgiving break last year, and some of us were on the bridge when the police used all kinds of things. They used concussion grenades, they used tear gas, they used freezing water from hoses, they used non-lethal bullets, and anyway, and I just couldn't believe it. It felt like war. It felt like war. And I could not understand why the police were protecting the fossil fuels over clean water. That's wrong. So we came back. We had some actions here in town at the banks. Because you know what? We vote with our dollars. We vote for our dollars. So if we put our money into banks that are supporting fossil fuels, then we are supporting fossil fuels. You see how that goes? And seriously, every dollar we spend is a vote on how we want the world to look. Yeah, yeah. So there's three, and you could say there's more, but I say there's three different levels of activism. There's the personal level. That's what you do in your own life, right? And that's very powerful. That's where you decide where you spend those dollars and what you do. And then there's the community level. This is your friends and family. This is your area, right? And then there's the outer level. That's when you take your message to the state, the nation, or globally. And here's the thing. Every action counts. Every action counts. Not only that, but every action affects the whole. Okay? So whenever we were at Standing Rock fighting for clean water for Native Americans, we were also fighting for clean water right here in our community and for ourselves on the personal level. And yeah, woo, woo. And on the personal level, see, if you grow an organic garden, if you refuse plastic, if you refuse that one straw, if you quit smoking, that actually affects the whole, if you think about it, because you know what? We're all connected. We are all one, and this is a revolution of caring. Woo! Okay, I'm going to share some words of John Trudell. He's a Native American, he was a Native American activist and poet, and we're going to do this in mic check form, okay? So whatever I say, I want you to repeat it. Okay? Mic check. That's not good enough. Let's try this again. Mic check. That's a lot better. Mic check. The earth is our mother. We must take care of the earth. It is not in man's destiny to destroy the earth. That's arrogance. If we take responsibility for our lives, we will have an influence in curing this disease. Maybe we should be developing our loyalties to this planet, our future, and our descendants. We must always act for the love of our people and the planet. Woo! Woo! Great job, by the way. Okay, here's the thing. Science can help us get to where we need to be. In fact, it will have to. We have to move away from harmful energy sources, harmful materials, harmful chemicals, plastics, and we got to move towards a more sustainable and a more healthy means of living. I want to thank everybody, and if anybody wants to come and see me, I'm going to be over at the green party table. Woo! Mic check. Mic check. Every day is Earth Day. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Vicke Kepling. And thank you guys. You guys are troopers for hanging out with us in this rain today. Okay, head on over to the Springfield Green Party table, and if you're not registered to vote, you can do that there. Our next guest will be very familiar to kids and adults across the Ozarks. While he first found his love for science brewing beer, he realized that there was something lacking in the science classes he'd attended. He decided to do something about it. He obtained his BS in chemistry education from MSU and a Master of Education in STEM education from Concordia University. He's been teaching chemistry and physics to high school and middle school students for over 7 years, currently at the Summit Preparatory School. In 2014, he and his wife started something special, the Professor Powers Science Symposium. It's a nonprofit organization offering science education opportunities for kids and adults. He firmly stands up for putting evidence ahead of bias, as well as the importance of challenging our own opinions if the science behind them does not hold up. And he's here to talk to us about just that. Please welcome Professor Rob Powers.
All right. Thank you all for coming out today. It's kind of cold and rainy, and I appreciate you all braving the weather. I'm here to talk about, I guess, beer, science education, and racist uncles, I suppose. And so my big thing is here we are today marching for science because of recent developments. We're all concerned about how science is being used politically. And we all, I think, agree that policy should be based on scientific evidence. We shouldn't be using science as a tool and, cherry picking things that we like that go along with our points of view. We should be using science to base our opinions upon. And so I just wanted to start off by just sharing a little bit about myself. I started off for my love of science, it began learning how to make beer in my 20s. And as I was making beer and as I was learning about how fermentation worked, it just was endlessly fascinating. It was so cool to learn about all of the different things you could add to a beer and how you could change the alcohol content or how you could change the bitterness or how you could change, various aspects of the flavor depending on temperature, depending on sugar content, depending on what kind of hops you put into your brew. It was so cool. And I got more and more into the science. And as I did, I just got geeked out to the max. And finally, I asked myself, science is so cool. Why didn't I know that science was this amazing back in my high school days or sooner? And so I made it my life's mission to try to show kiddos how cool science is. I don't advocate giving kids beer, but I do think that kids should have their own beer moment like I did. They should have something that happens in their lives that encourages them to further explore how amazing science is. And I think one of the coolest things about my job, and right now I work with kids that are as young as 3 on up to age 18, and the neat thing is kids just naturally love science. One of the things that they love, I think, is that you can give kid a cup of vinegar and a cup of baking soda. They combine them. They see this amazing chemical reaction, which quite frankly, I still think is amazing. But they think that's so cool. And then you can have this wonderful conversation with them about what they think is going on. And then they can further that study. And they can get a deeper understanding of things like chemical reactions, of limiting reagents, things like that. But the ball is in their court. You give a young kid some things and let them explore. They have the power of discovery. They have the power to ask a question and follow it through. And so for me, that makes my job the best job in the world. I get to help these kids explore and discover things on their own, and they have a great time with it. And so I couldn't be happier with where I'm at in terms of professionally. But what concerns me is something happens over time. I have never seen a kid not like a science experiment. But somewhere along the line, people grow up, their beliefs become entrenched, and they drift away from science. They stop feeling connected to that process. And I don't know what the solution is to that. I have no solutions to offer, but I do know that there are some things we can do. We're all here today because we support science, we support research. I'm fairly sure we all view science as a way that we can further our quality of life. And I think we all probably have friends or relatives that don't feel that way for whatever reason. And so I've spent years trying to figure out how can I convince somebody who does not accept the evidence that climate change is actually a thing and is caused by human actions. How do you convince that person? I still have very little idea, but I can tell you what doesn't work. I know that it doesn't work whenever you show that person graphs. That person doesn't care about a graph. It doesn't work when you talk about data with that person. It also doesn't work if you show that person a picture of a polar bear on a little tiny piece of ice. They don't care. But in my personal experience, what does work is if you can communicate to people about what is happening to them in their lives and on the local level. You can talk to people about how our waterways are showing increases in mercury content because of burning coal. You can talk to people about drought. You can talk to people about fish populations. I have an uncle who loves to fish. Him and I have talked many times over a beer, Coors Light, that his choice, not mine, although it's not that bad. But anyway, we've talked many times about climate change and all this stuff, and I could never convince him about climate change. I could never convince him about the damaging effects of fossil fuels until we did start talking about fishing, because he loves to fish. And I showed him an article in the newsletter that had come out about how some species of fish out of some waterways in our local area are not safe to eat because of the mercury content in the fish. That convinced him. Anymore today, whenever we talk about coal power, he is firmly against it because it's affecting something in his life. And so ultimately, whenever we have these discussions with our friends and our family members, we have choices here. We could talk about things that will not convince them. We can talk about the graphs and the latest data and talk about how we have seen these unprecedented levels of carbon dioxide and increases in global temperatures, and that will have little or no effect. But if you talk about their personal lives and you have a respectful discussion, grab a beer, have some fun, eat a steak together or grill some hot dogs and talk it out in a nice, meaningful, respectful way, that's how you get results, and that's how you get people to see your side. And so I'm going to keep it short and sweet here, but I do want you guys to think about, how can you meaningfully engage people who do not accept scientific evidence? I'm sure you guys are mostly convinced, and here we are standing on this cold day and freezing our butts off, and I think we all understand the difference between weather and climate. But maybe you could have that discussion with somebody else, right? So I'm going to leave it at this, but I thank you guys very much for coming out today and supporting science overall. It's been a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Powers. Okay, head on over to the Dickerson Park Zoo table if they're still set up, and see what programs are available to inspire generations. I now have the honor of introducing our next guest, who I know is also very fired up about being with you today. She is the Ozarks Conservation Program Coordinator with the Missouri Sierra Club. She facilitates grassroots involvement in conservation issues affecting Missourians. In this role, she also advocates on proposed legislation involving conservation programs. She has a degree in conservation and wildlife management and previously worked as an environmental specialist with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. She has volunteered with the Missouri Black Bear Foundation, serves on the board for Habitat for Humanity, and serves on the Main Street board in her hometown of Monette. She is incredibly passionate about what she values, and I can't wait to hear her share it with us. Please welcome Jennifer Connor.
Thank you. I am here today representing one of the oldest and largest environmental organizations in the United States, the Sierra Club. Our motto is explore, enjoy, and protect. Unfortunately, of late, we have been spending most of our resources on protecting. We face tremendous environmental setbacks. There are efforts to gut the Environmental Protection Agency, efforts to deny the science behind climate change. It's been an all-out attack on the environment. And we really only need to look in our backyard to witness how politics is trumping science. In Springfield particularly, City Utilities is attempting to build a coal ash landfill on a site that the state geologist has denied due to a significant potential for catastrophic collapse. Right. Indeed, he also stated in his report that the trending faults in the limestone were such that any contaminants on the surface could make their way into the Ozark Aquifer, which is our drinking water. We need only look at Flint, Michigan to understand the implications of destroying our drinking water. That's why the Sierra Club has been talking with city utilities and with Springfield City Council and other community groups to try and stop this, because coal ash contains arsenic, mercury, lead, and other heavy metals that can cause cancer and a whole host of other ill health effects. But we need your help. If you can take an action item home with you today, I hope that you will contact your local leaders and you will tell them that we will not abide having a toxic landfill that contaminates our drinking water. One of the great struggles we face as an organization is that we must somehow get across that protecting the environment does not belong to a particular political group, because the crux of the matter is this: the earth will go on. Long after we have turned to dust, she will shake off our refuse and antics, and she will persist. And so the fundamental question is, will we save ourselves? Will we protect the biodiversity that we depend on to survive and to thrive, like the honeybee? Will we protect our water quality so that we can drink water without getting cancer? Will we protect our air quality so that our children don't grow up with asthma? Will we protect our land base so that we have viable soil to grow real food? And the great thing about that is that science gives us the answers to these questions. Science provides us with a story that we can tell people through our own lens of experience. Biology has shown us that we depend on local pollinators. They provide a third of our food. And chemistry likewise has showed us that neonicotinoids, which are a type of pesticide, are wiping out our bee population, thus wiping out the potential for a third of our food system. Chemistry also shows us that indeed coal ash is toxic to human beings. Let me peel this off here. Climatology tells us that the climate is changing and that humans are primary causes of that. Science pleads with us to recognize our interconnectedness with the water, the air, the land, and the creatures, and to honor that connection in the interest of our own survival before it is too late. Things have been bleak, but there's a silver lining. Across the nation and across the state, there have been so many more Sierra Clubs that are joining as members. And these aren't people that are just paying their yearly membership fee. They are getting out in their communities and they are making a change. And that gives me hope. And you all are out here in the freezing cold, and that gives me hope. So let today serve as an impetus to one, take action at the local level, the state level, and the national level. Tell your leaders that you will not abide your public lands being sold down the river, that you will not abide the Environmental Protection Agency being destroyed and thus threatening your health and your family's health. Woo! And tell them that you will not abide a coal ash landfill on a very delicate geological site that could contaminate our drinking water. And two, we have got to find a way to engage, educate, and inspire our neighbors and our friends. And you know the people that I'm talking about, the people who are apathetic, who are neutral, but who are good people who place the value of their families' lives and well-being above a diseased ideology that denies science. And that's not an easy task. It is not a sexy task. It will take a long time, but it will be worth it for our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got two more speakers, and then we will get out of here, and you guys can all go home and warm up and turn and turn on the TV and watch all the other marches happening around the world today. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Brandon Bond. Brandon is a librarian and author who has been a lifelong advocate for civil rights and an environmental activist. He is a member of the People's Climate Movement and serves as a liaison between the grassroots movements and the scientific community. I'm going to keep it short. Welcome, Brandon Bond.
Don't worry, I'm not going to read my whole speech. You guys are awesome for staying here this long. Oh, thank you. My name is Brandon, and I am an environmentalist. If that sounds like a confession, that's because it is. Under this administration and the society that we live in now, to be an advocate for the environment is to be an enemy of state. Never in the history of our country have we been facing such unprecedented challenges to our environment. Every day you turn on the news and it's something new. Our country is in servitude to oil, this ridiculous dependence on this fossil fuel that can't last forever. It controls everything that we do. It informs all of our actions. We go to war for it. We destroy wildlife for it. We impact the environment in these terrible ways. And the only strength that we have will be found in solidarity. I kind of memorized the first paragraph, but that's all I have. In addition to being an environmentalist, I'm a high school librarian. And as such, I am kind of a curator of knowledge, and it is my duty to impart that knowledge to our students. Every day I look into the face of these teenagers, of these people who will be the leaders of tomorrow, and I can't look into their eyes knowing that I haven't done something to secure a better future for them than they have now. They need to inherit a better planet than they were born with. And you know, if we don't do anything about it, if I don't do anything about it, we are just as guilty as those who actively cause the destruction of this planet. Man-made climate change has been revealed by evidence-based science. It is not a conspiracy. It is not some devious plan of the enemy. It is absolute fact. Climate change is real. We can't deny that any longer. It's not just for the environment that I stand here, because our Earth is not the only thing that it impacts. Climate change has a high human toll, and it has a disproportionately high toll on our marginalized communities. 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal-powered plant. This is higher than any other group that we have in our country. They breathe 40% more pollutants than whites, which puts them at risk for everything from birth defects to asthma to heart disease. There has been little to no media coverage about this because environmentalism tends to focus on the environment. Well, it is in the title, but we can't forget that this impacts the people that have no choice but to be where they are and to live in the shadow of these plants. We need a rallying call. We need a moment that shakes us out of our complacency and makes us take action. For me, that moment, that clarion call came in the form of the Dakota Access Pipeline. For many years, I had become complacent. Under the previous administration, while not perfect, it had made it a little bit easier to take a breath or two when it came to the environment. For a while, it looked like we were making progress. But then the Dakota Access Pipeline started making headlines. Like everyone else, I watched it unfold on television, through fake news on Facebook, and everything in between. And I got mad about it, but I didn't do anything. And then one night as I was sitting at home, I kind of had a revelation. Thanksgiving was coming up, and I thought that that would be a perfect time to go. What a dark connotation that holiday has for our indigenous peoples. Something that we celebrate in our suburban privileges with our food and our families all around us. And I knew that I could not spend that Thanksgiving at home in the same way that I had done before. I was going to go there to Standing Rock. I was going to show my support and see what I could do in a tangible way to help. A tangible way to get outside the comfortable bubble of my privilege and join the people that had no choice but to fight for their homes. Because this is a very personal issue to them. This is not some intangible political goal. These are their lives, their homes, and their future. We can stand back and say that we support or don't support this cause, and then we can get in our cars and drive back home having clean water and nobody threatening that because we're in a nice population center. The pipeline was originally supposed to go upstream of Bismarck. The problem was the good citizens of Bismarck thought that that was a bad idea because it could imperil their water. What if there was a pipeline leak? We can't afford to suffer from this. We're Bismarck. So they decided to move it, and they moved it just upstream of the Standing Rock Reservation because our country has a history of treating indigenous people as items to be exploited. They're something that can be gotten rid of when they get in the way. And that's what happened. It's something that we thought should be relegated to history books, something that we have learned from, but that is not the case. It still happens to this day, and it was happening there. There's a friend of mine, a science teacher, or science, who gave me the encouragement I needed to go. I don't know if any of you are like this, but I can be very impetuous. So I had an idea. I'm going to go to Standing Rock for Thanksgiving. The next morning when I sobered up, I started thinking, I don't know if that's such a great idea or not. But he gave me the strength and confidence I needed to go. We gathered supplies from the local community, 500 pounds worth, and we headed north. Neither one of us had ever been to North Dakota before, and so we set out on this adventure. Due to some navigational errors, it took us something like 14 hours to get there, which I think is a little above Google's estimates of what it would cost. But we came into camp in the middle of the night. I can never describe to you what we experienced there or what it was like. It was one of the single most transcendent moments of my entire life when we came into that camp. It was a mystic setting. It was like traveling into another world. And there was such great solidarity there. Here were hundreds and hundreds of people gathered together in primitive conditions on the frozen ground, all united for one purpose. And that's why we have to come together, because when we focus on a single purpose, when we all come together, of course we all have our different agendas and different groups, but we're all really fighting for the same thing today. And I saw that at Standing Rock. Although I love my friend dearly who encouraged me to go to Standing Rock, I believed him when he said that he had something called a cold weather tent. Turns out it was just a regular tent. We were only going to be in cold weather. So I guess technically it was a cold weather tent. So we pitched the tent on the frozen ground and tried to get some sleep. There was a chartered plane from DAPL that circled the camp at low altitudes over and over again, making sleep kind of impossible. The floodlights in the distance, and we didn't get much sleep that night. The next morning, we joined in a profound ritualistic prayer at the riverside, and we were giving something during this as part of the tradition, which was corn pollen, which we took without really knowing what we were ingesting at the time, but it turned out all right for us. And then we helped out with the medical tent. We gave supplies around, and we helped mix a concoction of milk of magnesia and water that was to be used to put in your eyes when you're facing with pepper spray. And after we did that, we saw that there was a huge demonstration going on at something called Turtle Island. This was a sacred ground for the Sioux and a place that was a burial ground, a traditional place, and on top of this hill was set up the power of the Dakota Access Pipeline and the militarized police force that supported them. When we went down to that riverside and looked up on the hill, more and more soldiers, I'm going to call them soldiers because that's basically what they were. They were in combat gear, armed to the teeth, and they were soldiers in servitude to Big Oil. They lined up on top of that hill like gargoyles, looking down on us the same way you would look at an infestation of bugs. You could almost see the hatred and disdain in their eyes for who were gathered down there. The natives prayed and burned sage. The non-natives gathered together with them and showed solidarity. There were chants. And more people began to show up on that hill. It was kind of a dark feeling that would come upon you in looking at that. But then all you would have to do was look at the people gathered around you, the people that believe in something, like all of you gathered here today. It's easy to say you support something. It's easy to click interested on Facebook, but to actually come and be a part of something, that's very different. And every single one of you have done that today, down to the last minute. Of course, I'm angry. I've been fighting, I've been ranting, and I've been raving. But something is very important for us that we cannot forget. We're not fighting just to fight. We're not marching just to march. Although I need the exercise, it's good to walk around a lot. But that's not the only reason that we're doing it. We are fighting for something. Don't get so hung up on fighting against something. Think about what we're fighting for. We have a beautiful planet here. We have a beautiful diversity of wildlife and humanity, and it is worth fighting for. It heartens me to see all of you here. It heartens me to see what can happen in Springfield, Missouri, when people turn out and when they believe in something. Thank you very much for believing, and keep fighting.
Thank you, Brandon Bond. All right, we're almost done. I have the privilege and honor of welcoming our last guest to the stage. It's likely that you guys are all familiar with her and her work, and I suspect that many of you are pretty excited that she chose to be here with us today. Now, Eric may geek out over Dr. Pamela Gay. I geek out over Crystal Quaid.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you're done. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. This is amazing. When the news was here, they asked me how I thought about today and the attendance that we had, and the fact that you all are still standing here in this weather is a testament to how important what we're doing today is. So I just want to say thank you for that. I'll try to make this quick, but I tend to have a lot to say, so I apologize if I go on too long. But really what I wanted to talk about today was some of the things I've learned in my short time in Jeff City. For those of you who don't know, this is my first term as a state representative. I've been there since January. Yeah, it's been fun. But probably the most striking thing that I have learned since I've been there is more of a confirmation. And that is the lack of perspective we have making laws for the state of Missouri. Missouri is actually a really diverse state. You know, we've got these great cities. We've got a lot of great rural towns. We are an agriculture state. We have high retail. Biosciences is a huge industry in the state of Missouri. And unfortunately, those folks who are elected officials don't represent the diversity that the state of Missouri has. You know, many of you may know that I am a social worker. And the reason I went to Jeff City was because I didn't think we had enough people who understood poverty and the issues that were facing a lot of the folks in my district making laws that affect them. And unfortunately, science is even worse off than our social services world in terms of those folks who are making laws. When we start discussing things like poverty in Jeff City or healthcare or things that I know about, I can go on all day long and talk till I'm blue in the face about the things that I understand. But when we start talking about ag or things that deal with the science industry, of course, I don't know that. That's not my area of expertise. And unfortunately, it's really nobody else's either. And so what's crazy frustrating for me is everything that comes across my desk has to do with science in some form or fashion. And I think that too many people don't understand, as you all in this crowd know, that everything we do has to do with science in some way. And the lack of understanding of that is extremely frustrating, especially when it comes to those folks making laws. We don't refer to evidence-based anything when it comes to dealing with policy. Data has become a dirty word in Jeff City and at the federal level, as you all well know. And it's becoming unfortunate. And so when I was asked to be here today, I definitely said yes without hesitation, because I am asking you, as I have asked at the Women's March and everywhere else that I go, to be representative in the process. Because there are too many people who don't understand the reality of science and how it affects everything we do, who are deciding what we do every single day. I had a discussion on the floor on Thursday, not during the debate, but just kind of on a sidebar with another representative when we were discussing women's health care and a bill that we were debating. And I'm not going to get in the weeds of what that legislation was, but I had to have a reproductive health care conversation with an elected official and explain to him the difference between implantation and non-implantation when talking about women getting pregnant. And he stood there and said, "Oh, I didn't understand. That's how it actually works." And I sat there and I said, "You're voting on this stuff, man. Like, do the research, understand what you're doing, look at the data, look at the knowledge that we have." And unfortunately, it just doesn't happen nearly as much as it should. So I'm totally going off script at this point, but it's real cold. What I am asking of you at this point is, these marches are great. This is happening all across the country right now, and I've been looking on Twitter, and most people have much beautiful weather than we do, and so they're going really well where they are. This march is awesome. The Women's March was awesome. These things that we're doing, the activism is really great, but it's not enough. The next step after this is where it really matters. And I appreciate you all standing out here in this freezing cold, because what you're doing now matters, but the next step matters more. We need you, particularly, and I'm going to be selfish for a second, in Jefferson City, I need you to show up. I need you to make the phone calls to your elected officials and say, "Hey, what you're getting ready to vote on, there's a whole lot of data that backs up the decision you're making is wrong. And let me tell you why." We need you to show up in committees and testify and bring the data with you and talk about it. Because again, we don't see it. There were over 2,000 bills filed this year, and we have 5 months to get the job done. And there is no way that every bill that comes across our desks we understand. And so we need you to do it. We need you to come there and to tell us what we're doing is good or bad. But then it goes beyond just what happens in Jeff City. I need you guys to step up and be leaders. And you're doing it now by being here. But the conversation of science and evidence-based policy goes well beyond Jefferson City. It has to happen at our PTAs. When we're talking about what education program we're doing for our kids, we need to have data behind the decisions we're making, and we don't. I need you guys to run for city council. I need you to serve on boards. I need you to have conversations with your neighbor so that science is no longer a dirty word, and it actually brings back the reality of life. I mean, the fact that we even have to have this conversation is incredibly frustrating, and I know you know that, and that's why you're here. But it has to go beyond today, and it has to go to our elected officials, myself included, but all the way down to the bottom to our neighbors, so that we can actually have real conversations, and we no longer have to have signs that talk about polio and vaccines, so that we don't have to continue to have this conversation that has been happening for decades. So I'm going to wrap this up because it's real cold. Thank you guys so much for being here, but please stand with me for the next steps after today and continue this conversation. Run for office, run for something, be a leader, and continue this fight. Thank you.
You don't want to tell Crystal anything?
We love you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Let's hear it for Crystal Quaid, everybody. I know, right?
And really quick, let's hear it for you guys that stuck with us today. We really appreciate it.
That was like less than the excitement for Crystal Quaid. Woo! You guys are awesome! Head on over to the Missouri Naturalists. I think they're breaking down if you want to know about them. So, ladies and gents, those are the speakers, and we hope they've inspired you to do something about the anti-science sentiments in our government today. Stand up and say something. Make the phone call. Fax those letters. I learned that trick. Fax the letters. Don't mail them. Let the people you voted for or voted against know that evidence-based policy must be a priority, that funding education and research is paramount, that global warming and climate change is real, that the rhetoric of alternative facts is not acceptable. Our elected officials won't do this on their own. Where were you a year ago? Were you like me? Were you not pissed off, not scared, content, in thinking legislators kind of maybe had some of your interests in mind? Resigned to thinking you couldn't make a difference? Well, look around you. You guys have made a huge difference. I made a difference. Sarah has made a difference. All of the volunteers and speakers have made a difference. This movement is started in January as a tiny shift of ions in one person's brain. But this person's idea resulted in your feet carrying you here to this place. Don't walk away without promising yourself to call, write, or visit at least one of your elected officials. Sign one of all those banners. Did you guys sign the banners? Dude, was that cool or what? Let your passion for the environment or science shine on and be necessary, not only in your hearts and minds, but in your actions and deeds. Science, not silence. Guys, I can't thank you enough for being here. Sarah, do you want to say anything before we sign off here?
Just thank you so much for your enthusiasm, your care, your concern about what's happening, and keep up the good work. Don't let it stop here.
Stay tuned to our Facebook page. Text count to that number. You can also text share if you want to share some of your photos, and we would love to have your feedback. Text survey to that same number too, and I'll give you a link. Have a great week, guys. Stay tuned to the Facebook page. We're going to have a whole bunch of stuff for the next week. What's it called? The Week of Action.
Yes, Week of Action.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Now go get warm.